Uh, well, I'm middle-aged, I'm 42, and I've been working in the software business for years and years. My role with Wrestling Prep is to help out in more of a behind-the-scenes sort of manner. Some corporate development, some finance, working with Carolyn and the other leaders within the Wrestling Prep community about defining our vision and brainstorming on ideas to implement that vision, to help create a community feeling, a community around some common principles and, of course, the common interest of wrestling. I still work in the high-tech industry and have been a part of some rather big and exciting transactions that have caused me to grow as a businessman and understand what it takes to create big enterprises that are sustainable. How does my experience prior to Wrestling Prep help affect Wrestling Prep's current state and future state? It's interesting because I don't individually know a great deal about wrestling, but what I do know a little bit about is communities and developing a group dynamic. The situation you described of wrestling clubs often beginning with the best of intent and people that have perhaps really tremendous skill as wrestlers is very different than having the skill to translate that into an organization that can grow, can sustain itself, can attract others to that community. And I've learned from my business experience a couple areas that really affect the aforementioned of community and community development. And I'll describe that in a minute, but I might start by just saying there's a common difference between the individual contributor, whether that's in business, or the individual athlete, whether it's in wrestling or diving or gymnastics or what have you, dressage, in any sort of sport that's really focused on the individual. And you might hear in their linguistics a lot of description of how great they are as an individual. And it's less common to hear how great the team around them is, which is understandable because these are individual sports. But to support a community, the thought bubble that I aim to help influence and develop would be a "we're great" sort of mentality as opposed to an "I'm great" kind of mentality. Now, you can't get to that "we're great" mentality without first having that "I'm great" mentality. It's sort of a progression, if you will. And what helps people get to that sort of position of a "we're great" and "we as a team are great" and "we as a group can accomplish more than maybe I as an individual can accomplish" have to do with some things that really relate to community. And I see three basic attributes or dimensions of any sustaining community or growing community. First, there's an identity. Anyone listening to this or looking at this might ask, what is the identity of Wrestling Prep? Is there an identity? And I have some of my own personal views of what that identity consists of. But just speaking sort of at the high level, is there an identity? And you can relate that to any group, any organization, the church someone belongs to, the social clubs they belong to, the cliques in the schools that they go to, the universities that they've moved on to after high school, even the professional organizations they belong to, all have some sort of identity related to that group. The next of those three dimensions that I might speak about would be a set of information. There's some sort of information that is influencing that community. In the Wrestling Prep world, that information may come in the form of the coaching staff. It may come in the form of the support from siblings, from the support of parents and relatives, from the coaching staffs of schools and other organizations that are aligned in some degree with Wrestling Prep. And all of those two of the three legs of the stool, or those three dimensions of community, identity and information, influence one another. The third would be relationships. And so I started touching on the relationships. The relationships between the athletes on the mat, the relationships between the people organizing events, relationships, again, around people that are giving donations to the nonprofit to help support what we've got going on here. You see those three dimensions: identity, shared information, and relationships, and they all affect one another. If as better, higher quality information comes in, that has a greater impact on the relationships. It has a greater impact on the identity. As the identity becomes better defined, what is wrestling prep? What do we do? What are we all about? Things such as removing excuses, helping people understand how to get to a higher quality education, understanding how to manage their nutrition, what have you. There's an improvement that occurs. And then, of course, as the relationships become stronger, parental support, sibling support, friends and colleagues, teachers, anyone that is associated in any way to the athletes that are a part of wrestling prep have an impact. And so you have these three dimensions. You might think of it as a Venn diagram that all are overlapping. And in the middle there represents where all three of those dimensions overlap, represent what I think is at the core of wrestling prep and what we're all about. And the net effect of that is that we start walking around saying, we're great, as opposed to, I'm great, and chest beating, chest thumping. And you see it in the behavior of young and old alike. Like, bullying isn't tolerated. There's always going to be someone who's better, stronger, faster, more experienced. And without our being overt about it, the stronger, better athletes just naturally teach the less experienced or less strong or less quick. There's sort of this just natural understanding that develops because of our emphasis on the community aspects I just talked about, such that what develops is a set of shared values. And I just touched on a couple of them, like the no bullying or the edification and building up of everyone around us. That represents a set of shared values, and those values don't come from some sort of marketing machine or public relations machine or a bulleted list of who we are. It's something that develops organically from the community, and being able to identify everything I've just described, articulate it, and share those principles with the leaders that are influencing wrestling prep sort of bring us back to the original question of what is my role at wrestling prep, how do I influence? And that's the place where I spend a lot of my time and energy and thought and trying to communicate this so that it can be shared with the other folks that are a part of our community.